folks, and welcome to this session on CAT analysis. This we bring you the overall and cutoff analysis about in the afternoon slot. All right. So we have Sai Kumar Swami, the Center Director for Delhi, who's joining us to give us all the insights about the three sections that students are in this exam: Quant, VARC, and DILR. So without any further ado, I hand it over to Sai.
Good evening, friends. Let's quickly look at the overall and cutoff analysis for the afternoon slot. We'll start with the overall weightage of the paper and how it looked like. The afternoon slot followed the norms. It had 24 questions in the VARC section, 22 questions in DILR, and 22 questions in the Quant section. And this is the way the breakup looks like.
Overall, in terms of number of questions wise, as we were saying in the earlier videos too, there was no surprise for the students. 68 questions last year, remained at 68 this year too. Last year, remember that the number of questions went up by 2 from 66 the year before in CAT 23. So number of questions wise, there was no surprise for the students. Right, Sai?
Right. Generally, the afternoon slot students are always having the worry. They seem to have got some wind of what's happened in the morning slot. It's preying on their minds. And as long as the afternoon slot continues what's there in the morning slot, the anxiety levels would come down and they would go for a normal attempt in the afternoon slot. And this seems to have been true for today's afternoon slot.
Any other big surprises or things that afternoon slot students have gone in with into the exam side?
The basic thing is the preconceived notion that the paper looks a certain way, feels a certain way, and that forces many students to incorporate wrong choices, what they have not been doing through a series of aimcats, what they have not done in their mock tests. They start doing those new things in the paper today.
So sudden strategy changes
Absolutely.
which we have not planned for.
Absolutely. Sudden change just because the morning slot has influenced their thinking a wee bit is what causes this thing. And to that effect, I would say that the afternoon slot being similar to the morning slot would have allayed their nerves, probably asked them to stick to the normal strategy that they came up with.
Okay.
And that's been working for them for a long time.
So overall, in terms of surprises, because there have not been too many surprises, it would have gone in favor of the students. All right. So let's now do a deep dive into individual sections. Let's look at VARC side.
The overall difficulty level for the VARC section, as we have already discussed, we can classify this to be a moderate to difficult section. Some of the students who, as I said earlier as well, some of the students who went in with the view that this is my scoring section, I will do a lot of attempts, this is my number of attempts, they would have been slightly surprised because there were breaks all along the way. Whether it comes to the RC passages, which were difficult to read, which involved a lot of involved reading, parsing the sentences repeatedly, that would have caused them to pause, go a little bit slow. Compounding that would be the kind of questions that came in the RC passages. If they were straight direct questions, you would not have wasted time. But that was not the case today. Many a time we saw that the questions themselves were convoluted. Double negatives were used. Author's viewpoint was asked. Summary of the questions was asked. So whenever this happens, it puts a break on the number of attempts that students generally do.
I've heard that one of the questions had quadruple negative. None of the following would contradict, if true, would contradict except. So I
had to resolve that conundrum at the beginning. And I got stuck in that question. I was not believing that what I was seeing. Then I had to literally pass through and understand what was happening. Once I understood that, the question was easy. Right. It wasn't very difficult.
Okay. So that is, I think, what we have captured here. Quite a few questions are double, triple, and even quadruple negatives, folks. So which means, as I was saying earlier, very, very convoluted and involved reading was the convoluted options and questions were there, which demanded involved reading from the students and a very, very high level of comprehension. So I hope those who have put in a lot of hard work would have kind of been able to tackle all this and have would be able to score higher once the which is what they would see hopefully once the results are out. So, and what about the PFQs that made
the made a reappearance, but generally PFQ is one area where a lot of students find some comfort. It's their scoring area. They don't shy away from rearranging these sentences. They believe themselves. So a lot of people attempt all questions that are given in PFQs. So this would be a welcome change for a lot of people.
Thankfully, a welcome change compared to the 2 years ago when there was a new question type which came in and surprise. This time also there was a surprise, but it was a familiar question type which was a welcome
pleasant surprise.
Pleasant surprise, yes. All right. So let's now talk about the cutoffs in the VARC section. So, what would you say about the cutoff side in terms of
the 85 percentile? Around about 2021 is what we are looking at. So we've given a range here, 20 to 22 marks for the 85 percentile. The 95 percentile, that's a tricky part, because at that level, what really happens, Ram, is that students at the 95 percentile are not really falling so badly. They, even if it's a difficult paper, they still hold on to uh, a minimum number, so say 3 RC passages, doing a lot many more of the VA questions. While their accuracy might suffer a little bit more in such a paper, but the number of attempts would not be so much lower. So I would peg the 95 percentile at about closer to 30, not on the lower side. So this is not going to suffer. The 95 percentile,
All right.
you will find people scoring quite good.
Quite well. Yeah. Okay.
The 99 percentile is where the high scorers generally tend to be. So high scorers, 39 to 40 marks, 41 marks is what we have put it. So it will not be surprised if it's around about that mark, around 40-ish. And because that's a very good mark for this particular paper.
But
And
English being a silent killer, meaning many of us, when we take the paper, we see that we've attempted all the questions, and in our minds, we would be thinking that we would get a very high proportion out of them correctly. But English being notorious for being a silent killer, what is it that you think students can be expecting out of this set side?
I would say that while the 99 percentile, if somebody is looking at a repeat, for example, one of these clips we were playing earlier today, we had a repeat attempt. Somebody was attempting this for the second time or third time. For them, they have got certain notions that VRC, the good scorers, tend to score 50 plus.
Okay.
Now, you will not probably find 50 plus this year. That's going to be definitely
Really?
unrealistic. It's
All
not
right.
possible.
All
But the 50 mark is now shifted downwards to about 40. That's what I would put it.
All
Somebody
right.
scoring 40 plus, great score.
All right.
And that would be very much par for the course for the kind of paper that
All
was there.
right. All right. So let's now move on to the second section first. We will look at the LRDI section. Sai, what is the input or the lowdown on LRDI for us?
The LRDI section by nature is, as opposed to the quant section, for example, it gives you far less choices. While you say that both sections have 22 questions each, but technically speaking, LRDI is just 5 questions.
Correct.
You have 5 questions, you know, you don't know. And unfortunately today, what happened in the afternoon slot is that the 5 of these questions presented unique traps of their own. This unique traps that each one of these question sets presented was, in a way, shocking to many students. And as I was repeating in my earlier discussion, I was just saying that we all know that this is not a paper where you have to be absolutely scoring a certain number of marks.
Right.
You have to do relatively better than your
Others.
friend next door, the neighbor ahead of you, that's all. And if you're doing that, that's good enough. To that effect, if somebody was able to identify one set, maybe part of a second set, in today's paper, that would translate into a pretty decent percent.
A cutoff clearing percentile.
Absolutely, absolutely. It will be a good score. But somebody who's worried that they're not able to make headway in each of the sets they're trying, panics, moves on to the next one, keeps on panicking. Now, that's not going to be a good day for that particular student.
So the approach would be to identify one set possibly and stick to it and complete it, and then look for the second set instead of jumping through multiples at the same time and ending up not going anywhere in any of them.
Many of our students who practice on the aimcats would have seen that they would have seen familiarity with some of the questions. For example, the question set that we saw on balls and hoops.
I think that was from aimcat 2614 or 15. In fact, 2 sets, I think, Sai, you were saying.
Yes, 2 sets. One from 14 and one from
15.
15. I mean, the entire concept is what you would have practiced many months ahead of this particular questions. The balls and hoops questions. Anybody who translated that question into a greater than symbol, A greater than B or B greater than C, C lesser than D, had you made that data into that format, this would be a cinch. You would have got those 4 questions probably in very good time. 5-6 minutes, top 7 minutes you would have got.
So 2 questions straight out of aimcats, folks. Both of them in the afternoon slot. So
2 sets, that is 2 sets of 4 questions each. You have already made headways towards not just clearing the cutoff, but getting a great high 90 plus percentile in the CAT.
So those who have identified that, yes, I have seen a similar, very similar set in aimcats, would have kind of ran with it home.
Identified that, and also that gives you the comfort that this is the way to proceed.
Correct.
Because you already worked it out. And
right.
Had you done that, you would have been a lot more smiling today at the end of the exam because you got those marks.
All right. So overall, we are saying that the DILR section is tougher than last year in this slot, Sai?
Absolutely. Definitely tougher than last year. Last year, you had many more options. At least People came out of we were there at the exam centers, people coming out saying that they were finding 2 sets, possibly a third set, which they could easily work out. That was there last year. You're not seeing the same thing happen today.
Right.
You're not seeing that happen today. People are saying that it's 1 or 2 sets, maybe a second set. I was not able to identify a third set. So by and large, yes, I would agree with you. Much tougher than last year. Consequently, the cutoffs will fall.
Okay.
That's
in fact, I think I just have access to the aimcat 2615 question. The set reads, this is question 16 to 24 from aimcat 2615 and questions 10 to 14 from aimcat 2614. So 2 sets out of these 2 aimcats have very similar, almost I would say exactly similar sets. I'd be forced kind of tempted to say exactly similar question sets, not questions, sets, folks, have come in the afternoon slot of CAT 25. All right.
In fact, just a month before the exam, 2 months before the exam, we were discussing with a lot of students. I was discussing the very same sets. People got stuck. Conceptually difficult questions, but so consequently they were asking questions as to what's the best way to solve it. So I remember them very distinctly.
Okay.
Somebody have done that kind of practice. I mean, great.
Would have.
Great heads.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's now move to Quant. Okay. Before we move to Quant, we have to look at the cutoffs here in this section. So what is your view on these?
Cutoffs are going to be definitely on the lower side. We're looking at 85 percentile, around about 12 marks. That's about 4 questions, right? That's typically 1 set. That's what we estimated. It's in line with what our analysis was today. That finding that one moderate set was more difficult. So hence 85% bang on target. It's going to be 12. I'll not be surprised if it falls a little bit below 12 as well. It's quite possible. Depends on how students have reacted in the exam.
Right.
95%, however, I feel that about 19-20 marks is where we will find the 95 percentile, and the 99 percentile probably at around the 27-28 mark.
So those of students who cracked 2 sets could potentially be ending up here.
Yeah, 2 sets, probably part of a third set.
So the 2 sets that we just spoke about from aimcats, straight away you will hit 95.
True, absolutely true.
All right. That's great news. People all the time, students who have practiced on their aimcats sincerely and thoroughly, you can definitely be looking at a number upwards
One thing I want to add, Ram, that many students worry about their absolute scores. They discuss with you, they discuss with us that this is what I'm scoring. And that makes no sense because the score has to reflect a certain percentile.
Right.
The underlying percentile is what's important. So you have to understand the score is not what you are expecting it to be. But that's not what you are supposed to focus on. What you are expected to look at is the percentile that score corresponds to. And that is going to go at 85 percentile, go as low as 12 marks.
And just taking off from what Sai said, where will you know your percentiles? How will you know your percentiles? How will you know where you stand amongst the crowd, where you stand amongst the competition, in front of the competition? So there's only one way, one proper and best way for you to know that is to take your aimcats regularly. Because the quality of students taking aimcats sincerely and regularly is up here, which means you will be comparing yourself with the top-notch competition. That is why taking aimcats regularly is very important.
Absolutely. And for those who have already gone through this paper today, I would suggest that you go onto the site and check out your estimated percentile.
Absolutely.
You might be worried about your score, but the estimated percentile might say something else. So if you remember your attempts, if you remember how much of them are correct, if you input those two with those 2 variables, you'll be able to predict the estimated cutoffs. And it will be a surprise.
Absolutely. Do make use of the feature, the very unique feature that we have in store for you. You can know instantaneously, you can know your expected CAT percentile.
And anyways, in 4 days time, you'll actually get your paper.
Yeah.
Submit your answer sheet. We'll have the best, most authentic, accurate percentile predictor for each of your sections as well as the overall.
All right. So let's now move on to the overall analysis. But before we move on to the overall analysis, let's quickly hear feedback from this time a local Hyderabad student. Okay. So we, sorry, not Hyderabad. We have an Ahmedabad student. All right. So let's go and see what the student has to say.
Hi Jairaj, how was your experience?
Hi, so overall it was pretty good as we have given times more. So I felt nothing new because we have already been in this environment so many times, I guess 2 or 3 times. So I felt nothing new, but it was quite a new experience for me because I have given this for first time.
And how did you find the difficulty level?
I think this is subjective question, but for me it is moderate.
Okay, and so how was your overall experience? Was it good?
Yeah, definitely it was good.
All the best for you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's now look at what Quant has in store for the cat takers today. So Sai, what would you say about Quant?
What was unexpected lines? It was not very different from slot 1. By the compositional aspects, you found that some of the areas were a little better represented, I would say. For example, an area like numbers. And then you find that geometry was there, 3 questions, and that would have delighted a lot of people who are strong with their geometry basics.
And I've heard one question from geometry was straight from our study material. So that's one more question, folks, right from the material. And if you have prepared that from our material, that would have been a cinch. Obviously, once the response sheets come out, we will be coming out with a lot more details on how many questions were there from our material. But this is just the start. As soon as right of the oven, so to say, it's not over. So we have already identified like 8 questions in DI and 1 direct question from Quant. So that's
one can't overemphasize the fact that going through the basics, going through your reading material, the practice booklets that are there, you find so many questions. You find so many clones of those questions in the actual exam.
absolutely.
And it really boosts your score. And today's paper is yet another example of that.
Yeah. All right. So let's continue with Quant. So again, many topics that you normally have not been seeing continue to be absent this year also. So that's not too much of a surprise. So I think it's those of you who may have put in some effort in these areas, maybe feeling, hey, could I have spent this time elsewhere? But the problem is, or the point is that cat is cat. It surprises you. This time, it surprised you by not surprising you, basically, right? So tomorrow or any other day, it would have surprised you by giving questions from here. So the strategy always would be to, particularly for the students who are watching this video, keep having cat 26 or beyond in mind. It is very, very important to not let any topics go because you never know, right? All right. So let's now move on to the overall statement about Quant Sci.
It was very much similar to last year's paper. Very the competition wise, I would say very similar to that. The cutoffs are going to look similar to last year, and it has not thrown up too many surprises. However, there's one aspect which we found in the afternoon slot, to a certain extent in the morning slot as well, that the questions which are from the arithmetic area are not dead giveaways. You have to work for it. You will get your marks, but you'll have to work for it. You have to do a little bit more involved thinking. You have to pay attention to what is written. Sometimes they have put certain traps within the question itself. The question is by no means lengthy. It's not lengthy at all. But certainly the traps were well laid out.
No free lunch, basically.
There's
you
no
need to
free
work
lunch.
for your
Absolutely.
marks.
You have to work.
All right. So we'll now move on to the estimated cutoffs in Quant, which look like this. So, Sai, any
Quant 89
remarks?
percentile, similar range with last year's cutoffs. We were looking at that. It is very similar to that, about 16 marks for about the 85 percentile. And at 95 percentile, we're looking at about 25. And at 99 percentile, closer to about 35, 36 is where we'll find the 99 percentile in the Quant section. A 35-36 score is not too difficult. It's about getting 12 questions right. And certainly 12 out of 22, there were enough students.
Even if you account for some questions going wrong, attempting about 15 questions.
Yes,
right?
15 with some mistakes as well, but still getting a net overall of 12 is not that difficult. You'll find quite a few students who are in that range as well. So the cutoffs seem to be mirroring what we have seen in last year's Quant section.
All right, we'll now move to the overall analysis and also comparison with the morning slot in terms of how the cutoffs look. But before that, let me tell you, we have a lot of activity planned for you. We have been doing it all day. A lot of videos are live. A lot of videos will be going live for the third slot. There is this percentile estimator, which we have already talked to you about. There is our YouTube channel, Time for Cat. Like and subscribe it because there is a lot of videos in store for you, lined up for you today and all through till your cat journey of cat 25 is over. And particularly for those of you who are interested in cat 26 and beyond, you don't need to look elsewhere. So do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Time for Cat. And for this week and for the next coming weeks, do stay tuned to our time analysis, cat analysis page, timeforeducation.com/cat2025. All right.
Not just you friends as well. Please tell them that they can relieve themselves of their anxiety by going through these analysis videos in detail.
All right.
To help you all.
Okay, so now let's look at the overall thing is that broadly similar Quant and VARC and tougher LRDI. All right. So with that, let's move to the overall cutoffs. Now here overall, instead of 8 for sections, we gave 85. Here we are giving 90 because the reason why we give 85 is because 85 is the sectional cutoff, whereas here 90, 95 and 99 are kind of much better meaningful numbers overall from an overall percentile perspective. So here, as you see, the range is to understand, again, to put it in perspective, we have been talking about it when we did the morning slot also, Sai, to get 90 percentile. Only 10% of the people cross 90 percentile, obviously, mathematically. Now, to be in the top 10%, what is the number of attempts you would need? 23 to 24 out of 68, not even half. Not even half. We're not even asking you to get 23 to 24 right. We're only saying you need to attempt 23 to 24 with good accuracy.
More or less the 1/3 range of questions in the paper. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And that would give you 90 percentile. 95 percentile, probably we're looking at a 60 plus score, 62, 63 is what we're looking at. And for that, about 27 attempts with good accuracy will certainly get you to 95 percentile. However, the key for a lot of students is where will I get calls from? Because the prevalent view is that I need a 99 to be able to get calls from any of the IIMs. Well, that's not really true. Some IIMs do require 99 plus because of the high demand and because of the number of students who are able to clear the cutoffs there. But not all IIMs are at 99. You'll get a lot many more IIMs far lower down the level. And we are talking about general category students as well. So about 99 percentile in this paper will be about between 85 to 87 marks. And we are talking about 85, 87 marks attempts around 39 to 40 out of 68. Certainly good students have it in them to get to about 48.
Also, taking off from what Sai said here, you understand, this is what we're talking about for the general category. Now, for those with reservation, for general category to get to 90 percentile, you need about 1/3 of the paper. Now, with 1/3 of the paper being a requirement for 90 percentile, calling CAT a very difficult exam is completely incorrect because 1/3 of the paper is what you would require, right? And all of you, in fact, most of you would be first class students in your graduation. First class would mean what? 60%. Now here we are saying 33% of the paper is what you need to attempt, not even get correct. There that 60% is what you need to get. Here we're not even talking about the getting score. Here we're talking about the attempting score with a decent accuracy, obviously. So particularly for those of you who think that, hey, CAT is not my cup of tea, particularly those who are thinking of CAT for 26, 27, CAT is not a difficult exam. CAT is an exam that does require hard work. Yes, no two ways about it. It absolutely requires hard work, but it does not need innate smartness or being a genius to crack it. 1/3 of the paper is what is required, folks, right? Keep that in mind. Tell your friends who are thinking twice about, is MBA for me? Am I cut out for CAT? With hard work, everybody is, right? So keep that in mind. So now we will move on to the cutoff comparison across morning slot. So here we are saying that QA and VARC selections are slightly tougher, possibly, and DILR had a relatively more doable set. So overall, this is how the comparison looks like. So if you see, overall, the cutoff is falling. So from 64, 66, 65 middle number in the morning slot, the overall numbers, if you can just move slightly here. So from 64, 65 in the morning slot, the cutoff is coming down to 62. Whereas in the other, see, again, while the numbers may look bigger here, it is 20 at the middle number here, 21 at the middle number here, just a 1 mark difference. Not too much of a difference, so to say. So overall, putting DI aside, where there is a clear drop, Quant and VARC are slightly here and there. Some would say slightly easier, some would say slightly tougher. So ignore them. Broadly, they are the same. Whereas DLR has fallen. Would you say that DLR is tough?
Absolutely. You'll find a lot much more of the difficulty level reflected in the lower percentiles. And at the higher level percentiles, it gets smoothened out all the more. And hence you find that while we are talking about the sections being a little tougher, DLR being much tougher, so on and so forth, it does not reflect so much so in the 95 percentile, simply because you will still find 5% of test takers always being able to keep their head above water.
Right.
They are able to increase their attempts. They're able to increase their accuracy. They are able to batten down their hatches, understand difficult paper, let me do less attempts, but let me focus on accuracy. So the scores are not going to fall all that steeply. They will fall, there will be a difference, but it will not fall all that steeply at the higher percentiles.
All right, folks, that's all we have for you in this session. Do remember that there's a lot more in store, a lot many videos that are going to come up for the evening slot, and that there is this percentile estimator that you can derive a lot of benefit from right now instantaneously by knowing your estimated percentile. So do use that. You do access our page, timeforeducation.com/cat2025, and do make it a point to like our Time for Cat YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you.